Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 3. On today's podcast, we are diving into civility-driven leadership through the lens of someone who has walked the disciplined path of the U.S. Army and understands how respect, service, and community uplift and shape real leadership. In a world where conflict feels constant, this conversation explores how leaders, especially those rooted in traditions of service and accountability, can transform teams, organizations, and entire communities with principled, empathetic strength. From battlefield lessons to boardroom wisdom, we're bringing clarity, courage, and cultural awareness to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Will Moreland. How are you?
Crystal, I am doing fantastic. Been really looking forward to our time together. So, really happy to be here with you.
Excellent, excellent. So, Dr. Will, where in the world are you?
I am in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where God vacations.
I love that, and I never heard that before.
Yeah,
I
we have the
love
sweet spot. He likes hanging out here with us, all this sunshine.
you. I need to book a flight now, Dr. Will. I have some questions. Okay, so let's get into, speaking of questions, let's get into this podcast. How do you personally define civility-driven leadership? And what early life experiences, whether that's military or otherwise, shaped that definition for you?
Oh, great question. Thank you. When I think about civility and not just civility driven leadership, but just civility in itself, I define it as the intentional respect for others. So simply the intentional respect for others. And when I think about where this was shaped, it really started when I was a young man, a young boy with my grandmother. The way I saw how she maneuvered with individuals, how she interacted with individuals, how she just loved on the community. She was a service worker. She worked in different jobs where she would help disadvantaged individuals, but she never treated them as if they were disadvantaged. I saw how she treated them with respect and how she treated them with honor. And so as I got older and I really began to look back and really begin to start reflecting on my life and kind of where this work that I do came from, it really came from my grandmother, just watching her, even when I would just in the simplicity of when I would watch my uncle or I would watch my mom date different people and they would invite them over to the house. I would see how my grandmother treated them, no matter what their background was, no matter what their nationality was. And my uncles, they were dating the rainbow back then. And so to see my grandmother just interact and treat everybody with kindness, if they walked in her house, they were going to get treated like a human being. So yep, I have to give all the credit to my grandmother.
And what is your grandmother's name, Dr. Will?
Polly Gray, Grandma Polly. And so Grandma Polly was just an amazing, and even as I get older, she's since passed on, but even as I get older, I realize how powerful she was and the impact that she left me.
I hear that Grandma Polly, as you referred to her, was a huge influence and a huge factor in how you treat people today. What about your experience in the Army? What lessons did you learn there that maybe affected how you treat people today?
Yeah, another great question. You got them lined up. Thank you so much. So when I was in the military, I joined the military at a very critical time in my life. I was unsure of who I really was, didn't have any focus, didn't really have any direction. As I just mentioned about Grandma Polly left me when I was 14 years old. So from the time I was 14 to the time I was 19, when I joined the military, I was really living life with no boundaries, no restraints or anything. I had really just cast off all care about life because I didn't have my grandmother in my life. I didn't have anyone that would hold me accountable. And so it wasn't until I joined the military that I found this individual. His name was Command Sergeant Major Babs, and the way we got introduced to each other was I was literally getting ready to get kicked out the army because although I was in this new system, I was in Germany, so I was literally 8,000 miles away from where I was born and raised in Compton, California. But my mindset, my mentality was still as if I was that kid on the streets in Compton, California. And so that's how I interacted with people. That's how I saw problems from what I learned in the street. So long story short, I end up getting in trouble. I have to go see him for disciplinary action. And he begins to show me kindness. He begins to show me respect. And he says, Moreland, I know where you come from. I read your records. If I send you back home right now, if I kick you out of this army right now, what do you think will happen to you? And I told him straight up, I said, you know what, Sergeant Major, more than likely, I'll probably end up in jail. I'll end up dead. And he's like, you're absolutely right. So what I'm going to do for you is I'm not going to kick you out, but I'm going to allow you to come work directly for me because I think there's something on the inside of you. And he allowed me to come and literally be his personal assistant. And by being his personal assistant, I got to drive him around. And here's to really answer your question. I got to drive him around and I saw how he interacted with the soldiers and the family members in our battalion. And so much so, after about 2 weeks, I literally had a conversation with him. And I said, Sergeant Major, how is it that you know every soldier and you know about every family member? And this is where I got probably one of the greatest leadership lessons I've ever received in my life. And he said, because it's my job. People are my job. And I said, wait, no, you're the sergeant major. You're supposed to be getting us ready for war. You're supposed to be, getting us ready for all these maneuvers. How are people your job? And he says, the maneuvers, the mission, the vision means nothing without people. And if you don't take care of people, then the mission and vision will never get taken care of. And that was, for me, at the time, I was 19, 20 years old. I was so impressionable. And just to hear him, the highest ranking individual on our battalion on the NCO side, say something like that, that people were his job, was just all inspiring to me. And ever since then, I've tried to model my leadership around that people are always first.
You know what, Dr. Will, just based off the conversation that we've had, and it hasn't been long, it's been 8 minutes. And I could be wrong, so please let me know. You seem to be a visual learner because when you were speaking about your grandmother, you spoke about how you watched how she treat other people. And then whenever you went to the Army, you spoke about the commander major. I hope I got that title correct. You spoke about how you watched him treat and interact with people. Is there a certain way to learn and reflect that whenever you are dealing with leadership just in general?
You're absolutely right. I am an observational learner, and I know there are 5 different styles of learning and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, all of us are observational learners. I believe it was Maya Angelou who said that people don't care what you say until they know that you care. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, whether someone's explaining something to you, whether you're watching it on TV or whatever, watching it through a video, a podcast like we're on right now, the Bible says it like this: you know a person by the fruit that they bear. You know a person by the fruit that they bear, no matter what they say, right? No matter what they say. And later on, what I found out in leadership is people are wondering, does your audio match your video? Does
Mm.
your audio match? You can say a lot of stuff, but when they watch you in your actions, if you say I'm a person of integrity, they're looking for that. If you say I have high character, people are looking for that. If you say I care about people, people are looking at that in your actions, right? And so we usually call people, right? We call people on the carpet and we say things like, I thought you said you were this. I thought you
Mhm.
said you were that. I thought you said, my son, 15, he's good for that to pull me. Dad, you said you were going to take me to, Dad, you said we were going to go do this. He doesn't care what I say. He wants to see my actions. And so
Right.
observation has been huge for me because I just see it in play. Like I saw it with my grandmother, as you said earlier. I saw it with Command Sergeant Major Babs. I saw it. And I mean, let me give you a description of Sergeant Major Babs to really hone this in. He was about 6'5". He was about 300 pounds,
Wow.
black, dark skinned man. So initially, you would think that he would use intimidation. Initially, you would
Correct.
think that he would use force to command respect. It was by the way he treated people. And this is what people would tell me because I worked with him and they would say, you know what? Let me tell you about Sergeant Major. Man, he may be hard, but I know he cares about me. And because I know he cares about me, I don't mind that he's hard. He's hard because he cares about me, right? And so even when I would be in the office when he would hand down discipline, and it would impact people's lives. But the way in which he did it, people would literally thank him. Like they're getting in trouble, and we would have this thing called an Article 15 where you may be on punishment or you may lose some of your pay. And I saw people literally, sorry, Major, thank you. I know I was wrong. Thank you for this punishment. Thank you for getting me back on the straight and narrow. And I'm like, you're about to lose some money. You're getting ready to get some of your pay taken, and you're thanking this man. But it was because they knew that he was fair. They
Hmm.
knew that he cared about them, and he wasn't trying to use intimidation. No matter what he did, it was always with the betterment of the soldier in mind.
Oh, wow. I kind of feel like he was the same way with you. Then we'll get back to this. Like when he
Yeah,
first interacted with you, it was the same experience for you as with the other soldiers as well.
absolutely.
So, civility, Dr. Will, often shows up differently across cultures. How do you navigate these cultural nuances when leading diverse teams, especially your African American, your brown, maybe Hispanic teams?
Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of, in the work that I do, I've had the pleasure of being able to literally travel all around the world. I've been to 50 plus different countries. And so having the opportunity to work with leaders and work with individuals and teams all around the world, what I found out is no matter what background you come from, no matter what your ethnicity is, your nationality is, respect is universal. Honor is universal. Value is universal. Everybody wants it. And this is why in our work and in our research and in the data that we teach corporations all around, we use the word intentional. It's intentional. And so when you are intentional about what Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says, start with the end in mind. And so, in every conversation, in every relationship, you always want to start with the end in mind. So, no matter who you're dealing with, what is the end goal here? In this correspondence, in this communication, what's the end goal? Whether I'm correcting somebody, whether I'm challenging somebody, what is the end goal? Is the end goal to tear them down? Is the end goal to make them feel less than? Is the end goal to make them feel like they're less important? That's not the end goal. The end goal is maybe I want to correct a mistake that they made. Maybe the end goal is I want to bring awareness of something they're doing that is not productive. And so in doing that, I don't have to tear them down. I don't have to yell at them. I don't have to scream at them to do that. And if I'm intentional about respecting every human being, then I always start with the end in mind. Once again, at the end of our dialogue, what do I want them to walk away with? I want them to walk away with, oh, I did make a mistake. I'm not a mistake. I made a mistake. I'll recover from this mistake. And I have the support of my leader in overcoming this mistake.
I think that's a great lesson for parents out there. Especially when disciplining your child, what is the end goal in you yelling or fussing or whatever that interaction looks and feels like? What do you want your child to take away from that?
Crystal, let me say something to that because that's so important because this is what I teach when I go into organizations. I believe because we invest so much time at our jobs,
Mhm.
the statistics say that in a lifetime, we'll invest something like 90,000 hours in the workplace. And
Wow.
so my premise is if we can get this civility message right in the workplace, it spills over into our homes and it spills over into our communities. So if I'm working with my colleague and I'm learning how to respect them, honor them, and intentionally view them with respect, if I can do that for a colleague, then how much more should I do that for my kids? How much more should I do that for my spouse? How much more should I do that with my neighbor? And so if we can get it right in the workplace where we invest a lot of time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9, right? That's where we are. A lot of times we're there longer than we're at with our families. But if I can treat my colleague right, if I can treat Crystal with respect, how can I come home and not treat my wife, Christy, with respect?
Wow. That is like, that's an aha moment for me.
Yeah.
Like Oprah Winfrey says, that is truly an aha moment. Yes, that's definitely going to be something I'm going to be chewing on for a while.
Yeah, and when you say about your kids, it is the same way. What's the end goal? And we know,
Right.
especially when they start getting to that teenage age, I tell parents and I tell, my wife, I always tease her, when they get from like maybe 12 to 17, the
Mhm.
whole goal is to remember that you want to have a relationship with them when they're 22, 23, 24, 25. And so the
Mhm.
seeds that you're planting right now, the attitude in which you approach situations right now, it's going to fall over, And so I have a twin. My daughter, just her birthday was yesterday. She just turned 23, and I have a 15-year-old son. So it's an 8-year gap there. But me and my daughter, we literally talk every single day and we want to talk to each other, right? We're not trying to rush off the phone with each other. But that didn't start when she turned 22 or 21. It started when she was 5 and 6 and 7. And I'll share with you a quick story. My daughter, she's at school one day and I was traveling and she lost her phone. We had just bought her a brand new iPhone and she got to school and she lost it. And I was traveling and I called home to talk to the family. My wife said, "Hey, Kara needs to talk to you about something." And my daughter gets on the phone. Her voice is wavering. "Hey, Dad, how are
Yes.
you?" I say, "What's going on?" And she says, "Well, I got something to tell you." And I said, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" She says, "I lost my phone." Now, this phone, $600-700. Obviously, I wasn't happy about it. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I didn't want my daughter to feel as though any object or anything was more important than her in that moment. And so I said, "Oh, it's okay, Kara. We can get another phone." And she said, "But Dad, I love the phone. I didn't mean to lose it or anything like that." And I realized in that moment I had a choice. I could have been that parent. "What do you mean? You're irresponsible. We paid $600. You're not getting nothing else." Da 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 da. But what would have that done? She already felt bad,
Mhm.
right? She already knew the mistake that she made. She left it, set it down somewhere. She already knew that. But the question I had for myself was, once again, she's 12 years old. When she gets 22, what type of relationship do I want with her? If I tear her down right now, she'll be afraid to come and talk to me. She'll
Yes.
be afraid to come and talk to me when she has a
Yes.
boyfriend, when she has a problem, when she has an issue, right? We get off the phone. I go on about my business. The very next day, they call me back and she's, Dad, you're not going to believe it. The janitor at the school found my phone. I got my phone
Oh,
back. Now, Crystal, what would have happened if I would have torn into my daughter?
oh my goodness.
We would have had the phone back, but I probably would have lost my daughter. I probably would have lost her confidence. I probably would have lost her care and concern. And so, once again, as a parent, as a friend, as a colleague, I'm always asking myself, Will, what's the end goal? At the end of this, do we still want to be friends? Do we still want to be buddies? Do I still want them to respect me? Do I still want to respect them? And so I don't always get it right, but I try to always remember that. And it does help me in the discussions with my wife, in the discussions with my kids, and everybody that I talk to.
This podcast could easily turn into a a coaching for parents podcast. I'm not gonna let it, but we might have to have you back on for that, Dr. Will. We might have to have you come back on just to talk to the parents that tune in to this podcast. Okay, so my next question for you, Dr. Will, how can leaders practice civility leadership without slipping into performative politeness?
Yeah. So we introduced the first word of intention. The next word I want to introduce is genuine, right?
Okay.
Being genuine. And so once again, this is a lesson that I learned in the military, and something is, over the last, I would say, 10 years, the last decade in leadership, maybe a little bit longer, we've seen a shift. We've seen a shift in leadership as it relates to how leaders think about themselves. So when we talk about a shift, it used to be authoritarian. I'm the
Correct.
boss. You do what I say.
Correct.
You don't have a say. Just do what I say. Don't back talk to me. Don't ask me questions. But over the last 10, 15 years, there's been a shift where we call it collective leadership, where leaders are being more responsive to their team members, and they're taking a more of a collective approach to leading the team. And so leaders are finding out that leadership is more than a title, right? It's more than a position. Going back to what I said about Command Sergeant Major Babs, when he told me leadership is about people. So if you genuinely understand that, and if you look at your team and you look at the individuals on your team, and you genuinely understand that you're not just talking to Crystal, the human resource lady. You're not just talking to Bob, the IT guy. You're not just talking to Sarah in logistics. You're actually talking to a human being. You're actually talking to Crystal, who may be a mom, who may be a wife, who may be a grandmother, who may be a sister, a friend, who may be the president of an organization. They're more than their title. They're more than their title. And so for so long, we've always identified people by their titles. And that's how we decided if we were going to respect them. That's how we decided if we were going to honor them or even listen to them. And so when we start to understand that beyond the title, there's a human there that has feelings, that has goals and aspirations as well. And so for me as a leader, one of the things that I learned early was, to always start at the point of humanity. And what do I mean by starting at the point of humanity? When Crystal walks into the office, the first thing I'm going to ask Crystal is not, did she get my email? Not, does she have that report? I'm going to ask her how she's doing. And I'm genuine about that. I'm genuine about that. Now, I know there's people going to be listening to us and they're going to say, oh, that's this, pie in the sky, that's fluffy duffy type of stuff. And what if people reject you? What if well, because there have been so many bad leaders, people are leery when you come and ask them, how they're doing. Going back to your earlier point, culturally, now, I know this is not in the entirety of the Black community, but it's in a lot of the Black community and even some other communities. When I grew up, I was taught what happens in this house
Stays in this house.
You grew up in that neighborhood too,
I
right?
did.
See,
I grew up right next
we
door.
right. See, we didn't practice that before we got on this podcast.
No.
That's culturally, right? What
Yes.
happens in this house stays in this house. So if Crystal is coming to work, no matter what Crystal has going on in her life, that's the mindset she's coming to work with. I just got into an argument with my partner. I just had a blowout with my kid, but I'm not going to discuss this at work. I'm not going to tell nobody at work. But what do we know about that? An unfocused person is an unproductive person. If Crystal is just thinking about the argument she had with her partner, if she's thinking about the argument she had with her kids, if she's thinking about she only has $2 for gas, she doesn't know how she's going to get back home, she's probably not going to be productive. And the last thing she is thinking about, caring about, is this job. The last thing she's thinking about, caring about are our KPIs. The last thing that she cares about is our productive numbers, right? But she does need to know that she works at a place, she works for an organization that cares for her outside of her position, cares for her outside of her title. And so what I learned very early was to address Crystal and say, Crystal, how's everything going? Even if I notice something, over the last week or so has kind of been off, I know to err is human. I know that because she's human, that she has issues. She has, not in a negative sense, but just in a humanistic sense. If
Right.
we're humans, we have issues going on. Can have nothing to do with Crystal herself. It can have something to do with her daughter at school who's getting an F, or her son who is, starting to talk back. I just know as long as we deal with people, people are going to have issues. We're not dealing with robots. And so as leaders, we got to always remember that. And if you're genuine about your approach to say, Crystal, hey, what's going on? Come talk to me for a minute. I call it the 1 minute huddle, right? If you just incorporate the 1 minute huddle with your team members, hey, Crystal, just come talk to me. No, not about reports, not about KPI, just what you got going on. What you doing this weekend? You baking pies? What you got going on for Thanksgiving? Now,
People would
Crystal,
be shocked.
the experience with me, right? And
Yes.
when things start to go awry, she's more apt to then come and talk to me and say, hey, I'm having some challenges at work. We don't have to go all the way into it. But now, as her leader, okay, we can now come up with something. We can now say, okay, do you need a day or so? Do you need, do you need an hour or so? Do you, and just having that human conversation makes leadership a lot better.
What role does cultural competency play in shaping a leader's ability to maintain under pressure?
Oh, that's a good one. So, it's asking yourself, who are you at the core, right? Who are
Mhm.
you at the core? I often tell leaders, if you're not diverse in your personal life, it's going to be hard to be diverse in
That's
your
true.
professional life. And this is a challenge that we all have to look at, because we all live on an island, right? We all live on this island. When you go home, and I tell people, Friday to Sunday evening, that's the island that you really live on. That's the
Mhm.
island that you really live on. And so if you really look at how you navigate your weekend, that's your life. And so are you only hanging out with people that look like you, talk like you, act like you? Then you're on that island. And so when we talk about cultural competencies, for me, I had to challenge myself, because once again, we get into our own little ecosystem that looks like us. And I had to start asking myself, man, how diverse does my world look? Because once again, everybody is not everybody's not living this life the same way,
Correct.
right? We're all going in the same direction. I think about a freeway. If we're on the highway, we're all going in the same direction, but we're not going to the same location. We're all going in the same direction, but we're not going to the same location. And so, depending, especially in the workplace now, when we have so many different nationalities and so many ethnic groups, and people coming from different places, we all see the world differently. Once again, this is why civility has to be the foundation, and And respect has to be intentional because we're not going to all see eye to eye, right? We're not going to all see the world the same way. But just because I see the world differently than you doesn't mean I get to disrespect you or you get to disrespect me. And so for me, it just goes back to the core. And one of the things that I tell leaders and I challenge them is they're talking about you at the dinner table. They're talking about you.
Mhm.
When you get home and your partner says, "How was your day?" They're getting ready to talk about you, either in a
Yes.
positive way or a
Yes.
negative way. And so you
Yes.
get to determine what that conversation is going to be because they are talking about you. Every time your employees go home and they walk through that door, someone's asking them how their day was, and they're going to reflect upon their relationship most times with you. And so you get to determine what that conversation is going to be.
I was talking to someone, Dr. Will, and this was some years ago. I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't on my podcast, though. And we were talking about just cultural nuances and things like that. And she said something, obviously, it still sticks with me today. But she said, look at the people that will come to your wedding and look at the people that will come to your funeral. Are they all the same? Do they
Yeah.
all look the same? Are they all white? Are they all black? Are they all Asian? And if that's the case, then you need to change that.
Yeah. Just to challenge yourself, if you just asked yourself, what would it be to go through life and let's just say every car was the color red? If every car was the color red, how boring would that be?
So,
If
yes.
every color, right? If every car was red, how boring would that be? If every house was painted the same color, how boring would that be? And for me personally, um, people have been the greatest joy in my life. And the more I diversify what those people in my life look like, the more enjoyable life has become for me personally. And that's why I'm so passionate about the work that I do and challenging people to have conversations. I go into organizations and I say, man, you could literally take a notebook and walk around your office and just ask people, where are you from? And if I went there, what's one thing I should see? Or where did you grow up? What's one thing and you can literally get a world education by just going around your office, because here's the big thing. um, Most of the times we live in a world of assumptions, and you know
Mhm.
what they say about what happens when you assume, right?
Do,
But
yes.
most of us choose that world to just assume. And I used to do it. And about 20 years ago, 20 man maybe 25 years ago, I was working after I got the military. I was working in the government. And I sat next to this young lady named Kimberly. And every day, she worked in the cubicle next to me. And we were very cordial. We would, good morning, good night. But it didn't go beyond that. The conversation didn't go beyond that. And then one day, Kimberly's on the phone, and I'm not trying to ear hustle, but we're in a cubicle, so I can hear, right?
Right.
And so Kimberly says, she's on the phone and she's talking to her friend, and she says, yeah, when I get home, I'm going to fry me some chicken and I'm going to make me some Kool-Aid. Now, what makes this interesting is that Kimberly is from a place called Circleville, Ohio. You probably can't get more Caucasian in your life than growing up in Circleville, Caucasian. And then, as I said earlier, I'm from Compton, California. So you can't have two different people from totally different spectrums of the world.
Yes.
She gets off the phone and I say, Kimberly, I don't mean to be in your business, but did you say you're going to go home and fry some chicken? And she said,
And
yes.
make Kool-Aid.
Wait, that Crystal, here was the thing. Because up until this point, assumption. I assumed that Kool-Aid belonged to black people
Yes.
and Welch's grape juice
Yes.
belonged to white people, right?
Yes, Dr.
And I
Will.
said, wait a minute,
Yes.
you crossing over the road now. You're crossing over the road. And so we had this dialogue, and I said, okay, Crystal. I said, okay, Kimberly, tell me this. When you say Kool-Aid, what do you mean Kool-Aid? Maybe y'all it's something different. She says Kool-Aid comes in a little package, you pour it in a jug. I say, okay, here's the thing. What did you add to your Kool-Aid? She says 2 cups of sugar. What are you talking about? What you supposed to add to it, right? I was blown away, right? Long story short, this started a friendship that literally I just, we talk probably at least once or twice a month with each other. Once again, this young lady from Circleville, Ohio, this black dude from Compton, California, we started talking about our upbringings. Once again, she went home and she had a picture of me and her, and she goes home and she shows her grandfather this picture, and her grandfather, he says, oh, that's nice, you work with a colored guy. Now this is in the 90s, this is in the 90s, right? But for him, Circleville, Ohio, he's never left. That's where his world
That's
is,
what it
right? I didn't
was.
take offense from it,
Yeah.
right? But she was able to say, hey, update him, granddaddy. We don't call him that anymore. But it
Yeah.
was so interesting. Over the years, we've maintained this relationship, all because assumptions were taken away. I realized that we had more things in common than we don't have in common. And Kimberly is just an amazing, amazing. Matter of fact, I'm talking about her. I owe her. She's a teacher now, and I owe her some videos for her kids. Reminded me now, but just something simple like that. Another time, I was in Dubai, and I'm in Starbucks, and I see these ladies, and they're sitting there, Muslim ladies. And once again, I have all these assumptions like, oh,
Hmm.
why does one have on a hijab? And I didn't know it was called that at first, but one of them has on a hijab. One of them has this red dot in the middle of her forehead.
Hmm.
And I'm just sitting there with those assumptions. And I'm wrestling. Like, man, Will, just go ask, go ask. But I'm telling myself, man, somebody here may
Right.
see you talking to these ladies and cut your tongue out. I didn't, have all these assumptions. But I eventually get up the courage and I walk over to them and I say, hey, my name is Will. I'm visiting from America. I would love to just ask you some questions if that's possible. They invite me to sit down. The next 45 minutes, I got an education that I've held to the day. Once again, I'm able to ask them, okay, you have this wrapping. What? Oh, this is called a hijab. This is why we wear it. The lady had the red dot. Oh, this is my prayer. It's me because I prayed. Da 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 da. And so I left that. Situation not with assumptions anymore, but with information. And applied information is so much more powerful than assumptions. And so for me, I always try to ask the question. Like my wife and I will be out to dinner, and she'll say, "Oh, I wonder." We'll be seeing somebody at another table, and she's like, "Oh, I wonder something." I like, we don't have to wonder. We can go ask. We can go
Right.
ask. We don't have to assume. We don't have to go. Hey, my wife, she was wondering, like, what just happened recently. This lady, she had a little doll on the table. I had a little doll, and just
Mhm.
ladies older, and she had a little doll, and we're wondering, like, man, why is this lady sitting at the table with this doll? And I said, I'm not going to sit here and wonder anymore, ma'am. I don't mean to intrude on but me and my wife are just wondering, the doll, does it have any significance? And she says, it's a doll that reminds me of my daughter that passed away. And we used to
Mm.
have lunch and we used to have dinner every Friday night. And so this doll is just a representation of my daughter. And I still have dinner with her every Friday. Amazing, beautiful story.
Yes.
She had an opportunity to talk to us about her daughter, who she loved, obviously,
Yes.
that she still held dear to her heart. My wife and her was able to exchange numbers and they still talk, but all because we, wanted to have a human moment and not a moment of assumption.
Those stories were amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Dr. Will, what tips do you give leaders who are trying to practice civility? And I figure, I feel like it's an ongoing thing. You never just get there and be like, okay, I got it. So, trying to practice civility, but in the midst of arguments, in the midst of tensions and voices raised, how do you still practice civility during those moments?
I love that word that you use because that's the word that everybody needs to remember. Practice. We have to practice it. And like I said earlier, I don't always get it right, but I'm practicing. And because I'm practicing, I have the ability and the opportunity to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I may practice today and practice didn't turn out right. I meant to use my inside voice, but my outside voice came up. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever I realized that, let's just say something familiar as we've all been through this, where we're going into a store and we're trying to return something and we're not pleased with their return policy and we take it out on the individual at the counter. When I realize that I've done that because I'm practicing, even though I got it wrong in that moment, I'll
Mm-hmm.
go back. I'll go back
Oh,
and I'll say, "Hey, Crystal, yesterday we had an interaction that I'm not happy about. I'm not happy about the way that I interacted because here's what happened. I forgot about thinking about the end in mind. See, when I left yesterday, what did she think about me? She thinks I'm a jerk.
yes.
She thinks I'm rude. She doesn't think I'm the civility pro. She doesn't think I'm the guy that goes all around the world and teaches people how to play nice in the sandbox. If
Yes.
she saw the next day in the local newspaper, Dr. Will Moreland, civility pro, goes around teaching people how to be kind to each
Mm-hmm.
other, she would say, he's lying. He's not
Correct.
genuine. That's not who that guy is. He came in here and told me off, right? And so, because we're practicing, I do this with my kids, I do this with my wife. Once again, if I realize that I didn't have one of my best moments, if I realize that in that moment that I wasn't intentional about respecting someone, I go back and try to get it right. And that's why I always try to tell leaders, leadership is not about being perfect. It's about
Mm-hmm.
being intentional, right? It's about being intentional. And I learned a long time ago, my soldiers, when I was in the army, they didn't want me to be perfect. They didn't want me to be perfect, right? I didn't need to be perfect for them to respect me. I didn't need to be perfect for them to follow me. But I did need to be, once again, genuine. I needed to be genuine. And so that's why I try to tell leaders, practice. You gotta practice. And then it goes back to the core of who you are. Who do you want to be as a leader? Like, once again, do you want to be the leader that's a jerk? Or do you want to be the leader that they say, man, I remember I worked for this lady. Man, I remember I worked for this man. They were
Yes.
phenomenal, because every day you're writing your leadership legacy every single day. And so I still have, no matter where I work, no matter where I've been a leader, I still have people till this day reach out to me because of the way I treated them, the interactions that we had years ago, and they still make note of that. Me and my wife were just in on Veterans Day. We were just in a restaurant, and lady came up to me and gave me a big old hug, and my wife's like, "Who's this? Who's this lady?" I'm like, "Oh, I used to work with her when I worked there." And she was like, "Man, that was 20 years ago, and she's still acting like this."
Right.
And it's because the way people will forget what you say, they will never forget how you made them feel.
It's true. That's another Maya Angelou quote.
Maya
Another
Angelou.
one. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so when teaching civility, Dr. Will, how do you teach leaders to enforce, and maybe enforce is not the right word, but enforce the standards and the expectations without becoming authoritarian?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for that. So I do a lot of work around culture, and I go in
Mhm.
and I work with organizations, and we have this framework that we call cultures of civility. And in that framework, one of the first pillars of creating a culture of civility is the language that you use. So
Okay.
going all the way back to the military, we had language that we use, language like mission, vision, honor, right?
Okay.
Respect. This was embedded in us from the time you joined basic training. So for basic training for the civilian world would be your onboarding process. What's your onboarding process? So in your onboarding process, what are the values that you're talking about? What is the culture that you're talking about? What is when people, I tell leaders like this, every Monday morning is how you can test your culture. And what do I mean by that? Every Monday morning, your employees are talking to themselves in the mirror. The
Oh,
question is, what are they saying? Are
yes.
they saying, oh, here's this place again? I got to go here. Are they, man, I'm excited to go. I know we're going to have a great time. And so this is not something that happens overnight. This is something that happens over time. And so as a
Mm,
leader, you always want to be constantly communicating what the culture is, but
yes.
then you want to remember your audio has to match your video. And so some of the ways, are you catching people doing something right versus catching people doing something wrong? Most leaders, the culture is they only say something to me when I'm doing something wrong.
Correct.
Going back to our kids, right? I had to check myself on that. Was I only telling my son when he was doing stuff bad? Man, you didn't take out the trash, you didn't clean your room. But did I say anything with the same verb when he did take out the trash and I didn't have to tell him? I was silent. So then I had to uh, practice and learn, right? Because it's not natural. We just tend to go to the
Right.
negative all the time. And so I was quick to say you didn't make up your bed. But am I just as quick to say, thank you for making up your bed? Thank you for being a valuable part of the family. Thank you for your contribution of washing the dishes, and your mom or me or I didn't have to tell you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And so telling our employees, taking a three, I always tell leaders to walk around with 3x5 index cards. And when you catch somebody doing something amazing, just write them a little note. Once
That's a great
again,
idea.
if they went home with a note, if they went home with a little 3x5 index card, what do you think the conversation would be to their partner when they get home? Man, you know what my supervisor did today? You know what my manager did today? You know what my boss did today? He gave me this 3x5 card, and it just says simply, I'm doing a great job. And over a course of a year, if you were intentional and that one individual got 3 or 5 of those cards throughout the year, how do you think they would feel about showing up to work? How do you think they would feel about the company, the organization, when you came to them and said, hey, it's getting tight around here. We may have to come in earlier. We may have to come in. We may have to stay late. They're going to be more receptive
Hmm.
to that versus having what most people, in their cultures. Oh, they don't pay me for that. Oh, I started at 8. I'm coming at 7:59. I get off at 5. I'm leaving at 4.
Yes.
Right? That's all culture, and it's
Yes.
all about. I'll share with you another story real quick. Um, before I moved to Arizona, I was living in Germany, and after I got out the military, I lived in Germany for another 9 years after I got out the military. So we were in Germany for a total of 15 years, and I was pastoring over there. And when I decided to stop pastoring and move back to the United States, we literally had 10 families from our congregation decide to move to Arizona with us.
No.
And I told them, I said, no, I'm not going to start a church. I'm not going to have a church. I'm going to start my company. I felt led to start my company, grow my company, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're not going to have, I don't have a job for you. I don't have anything for you. But these 10 families, they said, because of what you created here and the family environment that you created in this church and the culture that you had in this church, we just want to be connected to you no matter what you're doing.
What?
And so those 10 families were still here today, 15 years later. We do everything together. We're now family. We go on vacations together. We travel the world
What?
together. And that's the power of, now I'm not suggesting that this is going to happen to any, but as a leader, right? As a leader, This is the type of culture that you can create where people, it's beyond, like, I didn't have jobs, so I didn't have money for them, right? You want to get people to a place where they love coming into your culture, they love coming into your environment. And yes, people want to get paid and things like that, but we've turned organizations around and cultures around where the pay wasn't always great, but the
Mm-hmm.
culture was. And because the culture was, the people were willing to stay there and work for the company to grow so the pay could catch up, right? And so we see this through, Southwest Airlines back in 9/11, when the airline industry was all going to kaput, that they rallied together and they saw that their colleagues were going to get laid off, and they say, instead of them getting laid off, we'll take a pay cut so the company can keep people. And if you go back into the research, Southwest Airlines didn't have to lay off anyone because of not the CEO, but because of the people saying we take care of each other. And that's the type of environment, if you're intentional about caring for people, that you can create in your organization.
Wow. You know what? I could just stay on this podcast and listen to your stories. I promise you, Dr. Will, I've never heard of a story like that before in my life, especially for a pastor or a minister or a priest or any of them.
No, it really is a
That's amazing.
it really is a
Yes.
phenomenal story. And we realize we have something. We talk about it all the time. We really do have something special. But it started, something, once again, something as simple of what Sergeant Major taught me about caring for people. So as a pastor, one of the things, and this is, if you're listening to me and you're a pastor, it's a little hack, it's a little pastor hack. And so, and I learned this from my pastor, when I was asking him, how did he grow his church and how did he grow the ministry? And one of the things that he would do when anybody would join the church, he would have his leaders, he would have his team take a picture of them, their new member picture. They would take a picture of them, and then they would have a file, and they would attach that picture to that file. And every week, my pastor, he would open up those files, look at that picture, read the files, read the spouse's name, read the kid's name, and then during the service, during the message, hey, Crystal, so glad you're a new member here. How if he'll look, is that Brian sitting next to you? Brian, man, we're so excited that you're here. If Brian's not sitting next to you, hey, you make sure you tell Brian that we want to see him at the next service. You know how that makes a right? You know
Yes.
who else did this? You know who else did this?
Who?
On the business side of it, Starbucks.
Really?
If you remember back when you would go order something, it wasn't your name that they would call. It was a number. Number 552, number 552, number 78. What did Starbucks do? Starbucks was one of the first that said, what's your name?
Yes. I didn't
Who's
even
this order
realize
for?
that.
And how does that make you feel when you hear Crystal
Mm-hmm.
versus 78? What happened when they used to say 78? We're looking at our receipt. You've never went to Starbucks and looked for your receipt. You're listening for your name.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
listening for your name. And that made you feel that you was a part, that they knew you, even if you didn't know that barista. Oh, she know me. They know me up in here,
That's
right?
my order. They got my order.
That's my order,
Yeah.
right? That's my order. No matter where you are, when someone says your name, I don't care if it's 100 people around, you hear your name,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so little things like that, just once again, creating moments of humanity. Like I said, for leaders, having that one-on-one huddle, that we call it the 1 minute huddle, the 1 minute huddle. I don't care if you have 20 team members, if you have 40 team members, you can find 1 minute. You can find, that's 20 minutes in your work week to say, hey, Crystal, I just wanted to check in on you. How's everything going? Man, is your son still playing soccer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just got a goal the other day. Oh, that's amazing. Right now, what does this do? I now know that Crystal's a soccer mom. Crystal, what do you like doing when you're not at work? So now when it's come time to honor Crystal, I can really honor Crystal, but not giving her a company pin, but I can honor her with something she really likes,
Yeah. Yes.
right? She now knows I was intentional. So when I go get a Starbucks gift card because I see that you go to Starbucks every day, that's intentional.
Hmm.
Or if I get you, oh, your favorite team is, one of the things that we do when a client hires us, we'll go and we'll scour their LinkedIn and we'll scour their, when somebody hires me to come and speak, the event planner, we'll scour and I tell my team, go find something that they like so we can gift them with that. And so, one recently, guy named Wes, he's a chef. He likes to cook. Baker. So we went Amazon and found him a nice little apron that says the boss chef and got him some little utensils. I mean, you know what he's thinking about the speaker, Dr. Will Moreland, that just spoke for their organization?
Yes. He thinking
When
about that every time he put that apron on.
every time he puts that apron on. And so now when they're thinking about bringing in another speaker, another trainer, who's he thinking about? Now, sometimes it works where he'll put my name in the hat and then, oh, well, we had Will, we want somebody else. But just to put my name in the hat again is a blessing for me, right? When
Yes.
someone else is talking to him about a speaker, whose name do you think he's going to say? Man, we
Yes.
had this great guy, Will Moreland, come in and da da da. So just once again, if we think about these human interactions and we start to think about how many different ways can we create human interaction with each other, our world is a better place.
Well, Dr. Will, again, I wish I could just stay on this podcast and just listen to your stories, but unfortunately, we're going to have to go. But my final question for you,
Yes.
Dr. Will, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Oh my goodness, that is a tough one. I know so many amazing people. Um, but I've looked at the work that you're doing, and I kind of feel that I know your audience. I think a young lady that I work with, her name, she's in Omaha, Nebraska. Her name is Lapora. I think her message and her stories, I think it would so resonate with your audience, and I think she would be fantastic. So I will definitely make that introduction between you two because I think you guys will have a dynamic time together.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Will. And thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your wonderful lived experiences. You've had some amazing lived experiences.
And I think that's when you tap into your lived experience, it reminds you that you're a human. And it does. It's made me my once again, this is not stuff that I've read in a book. These are things that I've lived out. And so when we talk
Yes.
about our framework, the civility advantage, it really has in my own personal life and my own personal leadership, civility has been my advantage. When people ask me, man, why do your teams respond the way they respond? Your family, it's not by accident. We're intentional. I'll share this. We talk about, maybe we come back and talk about parenting. I tell parents this all the time. If you think about your kids from the time they're 5 to the time that they're 15, that's a 10-year period.
Mhm.
I was very intentional about having dinners, family dinners, every single night, 6 p.m., no matter where I was in the world, we're going to have family dinners. And the reason why was I realized that gave me, if I could do it about 300 times a year out of the 365, if I could do it 300 times a year over a 10-year period, that would be 3,000 opportunities that I had to talk with my kids, get to know them, tell them about the family, tell them about our mission, tell them about our vision, tell them about our core values, and build family. And so now that my daughter is now out the house and married, like I just said, we still talk to her every single day. My wife talks to her 7 times a day, right? And we absolutely love it. We're now at the phase. My daughter blessed us 2 years ago with our granddaughter. Now we're getting ready to have a grandson in January. And their relationship, right? Being able to have a relationship with them. This is things that I thought about years ago, that I wanted to have a relationship with my grandkids. And so it starts with the parents. It starts with my
Yeah.
kids, right? If you have a rocky relationship with them, you're probably gonna have a rocky relationship with the grandkids. And so just being intentional. I challenge everybody. Think about the life that you want. Think about the type of leader you want to be, the type of spouse, partner you want to be, type of friend you want to be, and be intentional about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Will. I appreciate you being on the podcast. And to my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Dr. Will's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.